Yokoso o ashitare. Welcome back, yet again. I've got a bit of a disclaimer to put over the rest of this video and a few videos in the future. These videos, they are not meant for children, and up to this point, they've all been pretty tame, all things considered. However, this story, and a few of the stories to come, are gonna be a little spicier, shall we say. Now, in this story in particular, nothing majorly untoward happens to anybody. That being said, it would be remiss of me to not at least warn you that this does involve certain body parts that you might not want to bring up in a conversation with your children / parents / people with whom you might feel embarrassed about. Again, nothing particularly egregious happens, it's just a doctor checking a patient, though that doctor's motivations are a little suspect, but nothing bad actually happens. So with all that being said, let's get into the story actually. Once upon a time, there was a Tenyaku no Kami, and if you want to know what a Tenyaku no Kami is, please check out the previous video. Basically, it just means a head doctor, high-ranking doctor, a guy who really knows what he's doing. And he was a good doctor. He was a very good doctor. Followed the path with all the nobility he could muster, and he was relied upon by everybody. However, one day, this Tenyaku no Kami, this sage doctor, was hanging out at home, doing his usual thing, when all of a sudden, a carriage rolls up to his estate. And this carriage is specifically decked out in women's fashion. I don't exactly know what a woman's carriage looks like as opposed to a man's carriage, but it was clearly a woman's carriage, and it was overflowing, is what the text says. Now, what that means is that women in particular wore really, really long kimonos that spread out. You know, we have an ideal silhouette of what a woman is supposed to be, you know, that. But in ancient aristocratic Japan, it was different. What it was supposed to look like is that you start at the top and it goes down and it spreads out when it hits the floor. And so women were encouraged to wear their hair really, really long so it could spread out on the floor when they were sitting on the floor. And they wore extremely long robes, both in the sleeves and in the hems and whatnot. So you had this spreading figure. And clearly, for this carriage that was arriving at this man's house, whoever was riding inside this carriage was so high class that their kimono spread out all the way and spilled out of the blinds that were in the carriage. And so as this car is suddenly arriving at this man's doorstep, he steps out of his house and he understandably asks, "Who goes there? What carriage is this?" But the people in the carriage and the people driving the carriage didn't say a single word. They just kept moving forward deeper and deeper into this man's estate until they get to the entrance of the actual building, at which point the people driving the carriage unhitch the oxen and they make all the preparations for disembarking. Some of the servant men, too, who were driving the carriage also take up positions at the ready around the gate. It says, I don't know why they're at the gate, but it says at the gate, so maybe there's another gate that's like at the entrance to the actual house. But clearly, everybody is just saying, we're here now, but they're not telling this man who owns the house a single word. So, the Tenyaku no Kami, the guy who owns the house, is still just wondering what the heck is going on, and he gets closer to the carriage, and he says very politely, "Who are you who has deigned to visit my humble abode? And how can I be of service to you, madam?" And again, for a brief period of time, nobody says a single word. Not one. Just silence. And just when this guy was starting to feel a little uncomfortable, like he should be a little concerned, suddenly he hears a voice from inside the carriage. A soft, gorgeous, feminine voice. "Please, sir, prepare a room fitting for me, if you would." Now, the thing about our Tenyaku no Kami, he was an old man, but he was a bit of a player, shall we say. And so as soon as he heard this woman's voice and could see how refined and elegant this woman was, and assuming that she was very beautiful, all suspicion kind of left his head. Because, oh boy, some lady is calling on me? Ooh, I can't let this opportunity pass up, no sure. That's not going to happen. So he immediately tells some servants to go in and prepare a room. And they prepare a room a little bit out of the way, a little bit more removed from the normal parts of the house. Probably because, it's a guest, so it's not like they're going to be wandering around in the middle of the main houses, but also because, this was a fancy lady. And maybe the owner would like a little bit of privacy when entertaining his guest. Wink, wink. So he has a room prepared, and he comes back and he tells the woman in the carriage, "The room has been prepared, my lady." And by prepared, specifically what they did is they did things like clean it up, obviously. They set some folding screens there because that was something that they needed. They laid out some tatami mats for her ladyship to sit and take rest on. Just some usual basic stuff. But as soon as this man tells her, "The room has been prepared, my lady," she says, "Very good. Please, sir, stand back." which was common because, again, women were not supposed to be seen by men with whom they were not related. And as this woman was in the process of getting into a different place, she wanted to make sure that she was not seen by anybody for whom it wasn't proper for her to be seen by. So, as she's disembarking, she's holding a fan up to her face, which is very elegant, very refined, very noble woman. And at this time, the Tenyaku no Kami is also very curious. Is this just one woman? Because judging by how much the kimono were spilling outside of the carriage, there likely may be more women in there, but he looks in and there's only one, which means that this woman's clothes are kind of crazy long, which means this woman has some money. This is a woman of status. But there's nary another woman in the carriage. The only other person who was there, besides the men who were running the carriage, was one solitary page girl of maybe 15, 16 years old. And she comes to the carriage and she ducks inside and she grabs a box for holding a comb and then goes in and follows after her mistress. And as soon as the lady and her page girl are inside, the men running the carriage instantly hitch the oxen back up to the cart and they make preparations and they take off. Specifically, it says they take off like they're flying, like they're just out. Gone. So the lady obviously goes to her room that has been prepared for her and she sits, which is the honorific thing to do. You know, she sits in the seat that's prepared for her. Her page girl takes a position behind one of the folding screens, as is normal because, you know, she's there just in case her lady needs attending to. And so now we've got this situation where this old man now has this very high-ranking noblewoman of some sort whom he has never met and does not know anything about her, is now hanging out at his house. So obviously he goes up to the blinds because there are blinds that are separating her room off from the rest of the house, which is customary. Like, obviously men are not supposed to just go poking into ladies' rooms. That's rude, boys. So he comes up to the blinds and he asks her, "Please, my lady, tell me, who are you? And for what purpose have you come to mine abode?" And instead of immediately answering him with what she's doing there, she simply says, "Come in through the blinds, good sir. I will not be ashamed." Whoa, okay. So if you've been watching videos up until this point, you'll know that this is kind of like a no-no per se. Like, again, women were not supposed to be seen by men to whom they were unrelated to. It was shameful. It was embarrassing. But this woman specifically says that she doesn't care about that and she will not be ashamed by it. It doesn't matter to her. Please come in. I have something I want to tell you. So the player old man is overjoyed at this. He goes, "Oh, great." So he slips in through the blinds and he gets a good look at this woman for the first time. He judges her to be about 30 years old or so, and everything about her is really nice. This is a good looking woman. Her hair is long, her face and her nose and her mouth are all nice and shapely. She's got this fragrant scent about her from incense clearly, and her clothes were absolutely astounding. Very, very nice clothing. And when he approaches her, she has no signs of being embarrassed or ashamed at all. This text specifically says she behaved as if she had been this man's wife for years. She's so just not concerned with him seeing her, which is unusual. Now, of course, the Tenyaku no Kami thinks that this whole thing is a little strange, but in a good way. He's very happy with this situation. Here we have a very attractive, very elegant woman who has come into his abode willingly and has basically just placed herself completely at his mercy. He even thinks to himself, I could probably do whatever I wanted to with this woman. Not the best thing for a man to think, but don't worry. Like I said, nothing crazy does happen, so chill. And this thought, this whole situation makes this man so happy, and the text says that he smiles. But the text is not this man's friend, because it specifically says that he smiles a toothless smile, and his face is haggard with years and with wrinkles. And while he's smiling, he comes closer to this woman to hear what she has to say. Now, another thing to keep in mind is this old man used to have a wife. He doesn't anymore. Unfortunately for him, his wife of many years had actually passed 3 or 4 years just before this. So he was single, shall we say. And so this whole situation just set his heart ablaze in gratitude and happiness. He was overjoyed at the whole situation. Now, having asked this woman, why are you here? What would you like from me? She responds in classical aristocratic fashion. She can't just simply say that why she's here, what her purpose is. She's got to be artistic about it, beat around the bush, say everything in a poetic, frou-frou fancy kind of way. So she says, the human heart is a fickle beast. It causes us so much grief, and when our lives are in danger, it is wont to throw out all caution to the wind, and all embarrassment and all shame means nothing when death is at stake. And it is in such desperation for my life, and such little concern for shame that I have come to you today, sir. If only I could but extend my life just a little bit longer, I would undertake almost any shameful act. And so whether I live or die, sir, is in your hands. Please, I entrust my fate to you. And she begins crying, because that's what all of the nobility does. They love to cry. Crying and crying and crying. Now, when the old man hears this, he is moved by it. Obviously, this woman is struggling with something, and he very much likes this woman. She's very easy on the eyes. She's very classy. She knows fine dining. And so he asks her, well, my good lady, what is it that ails you? Instead of answering him with words, all she simply does is she goes to a slit in her hakama, in her big billowy pants, and she exposes her thigh. So this is where things are going to start getting a little weird, okay? And initially, the old man is just stunned by how white as snow her one thigh is. And after he gets done with the shock of seeing an attractive girl's thigh, which men didn't really see all that much, he started noticing that there was some swelling, some inflammation. It says hare is specifically the word that it uses, and hare shows up in the previous story as well. But in looking into it, this is more like small bumps, is I think what is specifically he's seeing. Now, because it's only the lady's thigh, he doesn't really know what's going on. It's just a little bit there. So he asks her to please, lady, remove your pants. A very straightforward way. But he's a doctor, and he's got to figure out what the heck is wrong with her. And again, this is where things are going to get weird. So now this doctor has this lady with no pants, and he's looking at the front part. Specifically is the terminology that it uses. And then, okay, again, it's going to get a little weird. I apologize, but this is the parts that we're dealing with. He still can't tell exactly what is wrong with her because there's hair. K specifically is the word that it uses. K. There's hair in the way. Again, I'm not going to get into specifics. I'm pretty sure you can imagine. So he has to part the hair using his hands. And he does that. And finally, he now knows what is ailing this woman. And it's bad. Now, the part of the story that tells us what the name of this sickness is unfortunately missing. But whatever it is, it's really bad. And the doctor decides then and there that he, as a professional, as somebody who has years and years of experience and who's second to none in the realm in doctoring, this lady was right to come to him because he's one of the only few people who has the skill and the experience necessary to treat it properly. So he decides that he is going to use all methods, anything he can think of, all of the most obscure, esoteric techniques that he can muster to cure this lady who has come of her own accord to his house and has thrown herself into his good graces. And without even having any other servants come, because it is rather an embarrassing situation. I mean, if you've got problems in that area, the fewer people who are looking at you, the better. So this doctor, whether because he wanted this lady all for himself or out of a sense of her privacy or maybe a little bit of both, he has none of his servants come. He just says, please, I will hand this of mine own accord. And so he spends all that day and all that night treating her. And she stays with him for about 7 days. 7 whole days he just spends in very intensive care trying to heal this woman of whatever it is that ails her. She's got bumps around a certain area. There are probably a few things that come to mind. But after about a week of very dedicated work on the doctor's part, things started becoming much better. And as this woman is practically healed at this point, the old man is now starting to scheme. Because now that the worst part is over and he's taken care of what she actually came here for, he starts wondering, who is this woman? What's her name? I want to know more about her because I want to keep in contact with her if you get my drift. And so he thinks to himself, okay, before I send her back, I at least need to know her name. And he probably brings this up to her at some point. And so after making sure that she understands what medicine she needs to take and giving her this medicine, I don't fully understand what the medicine is. It does describe it in the story, something to do with bird feathers and a liquid in a specific kind of bowl. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but the story explains the medicine. And as it is now clear to everybody that she is now in the green, like there's no more problems, this lady says to him, my good sir, you have seen me in a way that almost nobody else has. Certainly in a very shameful, embarrassing way. And at this point, I feel like it is appropriate to almost think of you as a second father of mine. And thus, just as I make my leave, I will reveal to you my name, and I plan on visiting you regularly from here on out, as again, I consider you like family. And when the old man hears this, and I'm not entirely sure why he thinks this, but apparently this was probably just the way their culture worked, he thinks, oh great, she's probably going to stay for another 4 or 5 days, and at which point we send her back, and I don't have to worry about her trying to escape or anything like that. I'm not going to miss my chance to get to know her and potentially get a little something more, if you know what I mean. I mean him, because... But he lets his guard down. And that very night, this woman and her little page girl, they schemed together. And wearing a simple shift, I guess is the appropriate term. Specifically, the phraseology is, if I understand it correctly, tonoi mono no usuwataginu, which means tonoi is like honorific way of sleeping. It's somebody who goes to bed. And mono means a thing, and then usu means thin. Wata means cotton, and kinu means robe. So she's just wearing like a nightgown, a single nightgown. She takes off all the rest of her clothing, leaves it there, and she and this one solitary page girl flee into the night. They just poof, they disappear. They're gone. Now the old man didn't know this, and at this point he brings the lady her dinner as per usual, and he comes into the room and he doesn't immediately see her, and he thinks to himself, oh, she must have stepped out to, I don't know, take care of business, that kind of business, not the pretty kind of business, but the business that we all have to do probably once, maybe a couple of times a day, depending on your digestion. Oh, she stepped out for some business. I'll come back later. And so he takes this tray of food back to the kitchen or wherever it is and puts it somewhere. And he comes back to the room and man, it's dark. Gosh, is it dark. I can't see a thing in here. So he goes over to one of the lanterns or one of the torches and he lights it. And as soon as he lights it, he looks around and he sees, oh no, there's clothes everywhere. What is the servant girl doing? What the heck? This is her job. She's got to tidy this place up. What the heck? And that's what he thinks. And he goes over to the folding screen where the young lady is supposed to be, the young page girl is supposed to be, and he says, excuse me, miss, but you have been behind that folding screen for certainly a long time at this point. What is it that you are doing, might I ask? And he looks behind the folding screen, and what does he see? No page girl. She's gone. Just more clothing. And by looking at the clothing, he can tell the only thing missing is that one nightgown style robe, and he starts putting two and two together. Oh no. She must have put on only this one thing, which I'm assuming she only wore that because that's probably the easiest bit of clothing to run away in. Oh no. She put on her one robe and she escaped. She escaped with her page girl. Where did she go? And so he goes into a small panic, like he's now freaking out a little bit. His heart starts pounding, and he doesn't know what to do for a brief moment. So he calls his servants. He has them lock the gate to make sure nobody can get out, and he gives everybody a torch, and he has them all search around the premises looking for this lady. The whole time he's searching for her too, he's just constantly remembering her beautiful visage and how lovely she was and how great it was to be around her. And he's just deeply longing to see her again. Oh no, she's escaped. How could this be? And he starts regretting, oh no, I should have done the thing that I was intending to do while I had the chance, which I don't know exactly what he means by the thing he wanted to do. It could just be that he just wanted to make sure he knew her name, or that he had some way of keeping in touch with her. It could be something a little more inappropriate, shall we say. I don't know. That's the thing about Japanese still today even, is that it leaves a lot up to interpretation, a lot of context. It's a very highly contextual language. So what does he mean by that? I'm not entirely sure. But whatever it was, the lady clearly didn't want any part of it. And the old man, once it starts dawning on him that she is gone, there's nothing he can do about it, and he starts having to come to terms with this. He starts stamping his feet in frustration. He starts cursing and swearing and just very frustrated, saying things like, but I don't even have a wife anymore. Oh, and even if she was another man's wife, it's not like I had to marry her. I just would have liked someone to talk to about my feelings and have somebody come visit me every once in a while. Oh, no, 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 no. And again, he starts stamping his, well, I don't know if stamping his feet is what he does, but he starts doing all of the things that in ancient Japanese culture was expressions of frustration. And as they all do in the ancient capital, he starts crying. He starts crying, tears of frustration and anger. But the thing about it is, not everybody was on his side. Because again, I think everybody knew, and I think that whoever wrote this text knew, that this guy was not the most trustworthy of men. And so, his underlings, his students, his deshi is specifically the word that he uses, his disciples, the people who were studying under him, they all thought it was a hoot. They thought it was hilarious. This woman had come in and so perfectly seduced this man and made him put down his guard so effectively that she was just able to scoot on right out of there. Just boom, gone. And they thought it was hilarious. And so they were giggling behind the scenes to themselves the whole time. And it wasn't just his disciples. It wasn't just his underlings. When word of this whole thing got out, everybody in the capital thought it was actually kind of funny. And whenever anybody brought it up around him, and they would do so on purpose, he would get mad and he would start making excuses about why it was so stupid and no, that's not how it happened. Shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. And everybody kind of got a hoot of poking at this old man, which might not be the nicest thing to do to somebody, like, you know, making jokes at an old man's expense. I mean, old people are lonely, bro. Like, that's a fact. But apparently, again, I don't know how much we can trust this guy's intentions. Just saying. So, who's in the right? Who's in the wrong? I don't know. We're all human. We all make mistakes. This guy probably made mistakes. This guy probably had some genuine hurt feelings and whatever, but you know, who knows? Who knows? That's where I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Please debate amongst yourselves in the comments. Who's in the right? Who's in the wrong? Should we feel bad for the old guy? Should we feel more bad for the lady? I don't know. It's up to you guys. I'll leave it there. And thus is it said that this woman was indeed a very, very clever girl for being able to convince this doctor to treat her and escape without having anything else happen to her. Basically, she just got free healthcare. That's what we did. She got free healthcare. Okay, that's the story. And I got all the commentary that I wanted in there, in the story itself. So again, please feel free if you have any more ideas, talk about it in the comments. That's what they're there for. And yeah, thank you very much for listening to this story. Ito kateji ke no koso haberi kere. So if you did enjoy this story, please feel free to like the video. Or if you like ancient Japanese culture, history, literature, feel free to subscribe so you can figure out more of what I plan on doing in the future. There's going to be more stories like these and possibly some further projects. We shall see. But anyway, that's going to be it for now. Thank you once again for your support and your engagement and your listen/watch. And hopefully we will see you in the next one. Goodbye.